2020 is off to a rocky start for many countries around the globe. People in the Philippines have to contend with the tall volcano, which, as of this writing, is on the brink of eruption. However, despite all these warnings, many people in the island nation are refusing to leave dangerous zones. Many people want to stay close to home, which could prove to be a disastrous decision if the volcano erupts. Volcanoes are terrifying forces of nature, but at the same time, rather beautiful. Today on Underworld, we are going to be looking at 5 massive volcano eruptions that were caught on camera. In 2018, much of the United States overlooked the terrible catastrophe that transpired in Guatemala on June 3rd. On this date, the Fuego volcano erupted. Ash and boulders shot out of the volcano, wiping out an entire village known as San Miguel Los Lotes. Amateur footage captured the extent of the destruction and just how high the smoke loomed in nearby areas. The ash and gas rose nearly 4,000 meters into the sky. Numerous people perished instantly, with a final toll of 202 coming out once rescue crews could make their way safely to the area. What's even more devastating is 101 remains could not be identified, and experts were unsure if these were duplicates of individuals already identified or even more people who lost their lives in the destruction. Chaos gripped the area in the immediate aftermath, with everyone trying to get out of the way of the lava and smoke's path. In this video, you can see rescue crews trying to direct traffic, although it's hard to make out anything among all the smoke. The Fuego volcano went off at the same time as Hawaii's Kilauea volcano, although the former proved to be far deadlier. It was one of the worst eruptions to take place in 2018, and hopefully the footage shows just why you need to evacuate areas immediately upon learning a volcano eruption is imminent. White Island is a major tourist attraction in New Zealand. It also happens to be an active volcano, but that doesn't stop the thousands of visitors every year from checking out the majestic site. Unfortunately, for some tourists one fateful day in 2019, it proved to be a bad time to take a vacation. Most of the volcano lies underneath the ocean, with only really its crater being visible above sea level. It's ideal for short boat trips where tourists can take pictures and say they got close to an active volcano. While it doesn't erupt often, it did one tragic day in December of 2019. Footage provided to the Telegraph shows the destruction from the vantage point of one of the boats leaving the site. You can hear the sound of people urging others to seek shelter to get out of harm's way of the smoke and ash. While initial estimates state that roughly 100 tourists were on the island during the time of the eruption, this was later revised to 47 people directly on the island, not including those on boats nearby. Boats that were close did their best to take as many people as they could, and one vessel even launched an emergency inflatable to rescue 23 people before getting back to the mainland. The New Zealand Coast Guard and 3 commercial helicopter pilots immediately made their way to the island to rescue anyone left behind. The final fatality count was 20 individuals, including 14 Australians, 4 Americans, and 2 New Zealanders. 27 more sustained injuries. No additional eruptive activity took place following this event. Ever since, the White Island Tours website has had to update its information to provide more warning materials to tourists about what they are about to visit. The Mount St. Helens eruption is perhaps the best known volcanic eruption in American history. Seismic activity initially warned experts that an eruption was imminent. Over 100 earthquakes took place in a single week. On March 27, 1980, the volcano erupted for the first time in more than a century. In rare footage, you can see a time-lapse photo series of the volcano beginning to erupt and just how far the ash and rocks flew.
I glanced over at the mountain, and the entire north face was in motion, was sliding down. And it's such an unbelievable view that I like shook my head and I said, am I really seeing this?
The steam explosions created a crater more than 250 feet in diameter. The next day, 12 more eruptions took place, while on March 30th, 93 explosions occurred on a single day. It proved to be the deadliest and most economically devastating volcanic eruption within the contiguous United States. 57 people lost their lives, while 200 houses, 15 miles of railways, 185 miles of highway, and 47 bridges were destroyed. On May 23rd, a film crew was dropped into the site to document the damage. They quickly became lost, however, when their compasses began to spin in circles. The day after they arrived on the site, another eruption took place. Fortunately, the film crew survived and were rescued 2 days later. When all is said and done, Mount St. Helens released a total of 24 megatons of thermal energy. This is roughly the equivalent of 1,600 atomic bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima. $1.1 billion, which would be about $3.4 billion in today's money, was approved by Congress to repair the damage, a major bulk of which went to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the United States Army Corps of Engineers, and the Small Business Administration. While some seismic activity has taken place in the years since, nothing on this scale has happened again in the area. However, that doesn't mean that Skamania County will always be safe. For the summer of 2015, the entire nation of Ecuador was on edge as Cotopaxi showed signs of eruption. The volcano began to rumble for the first time in 70 years. Initially, the volcano emitted a constant stream of ash and steam. Small explosions were prevalent, but most everyone was just waiting for the main eruption to occur. As expected with imminent volcanic eruptions, a series of earthquakes took place several days before it began to moderately erupt. On August 14th and 15th of 2015, ash began spewing heavily out of the volcano, damaging nearby farmland. The Ecuadorian government was on edge during this time and began making plans to evacuate large swaths of citizens should a more devastating eruption take place. If you saw what they saw, which you can see through this footage, you would likely be on edge too.
The massive Cotopaxi volcano spewed ash and smoke up to 2 kilometers over its crater on Friday, with the Geophysical Institute reporting that it entered an active state of eruption after a 5:30 a.m. tremor. For almost 3 hours, from noon until 3 p.m. local time, the volcano continuously emitted smoke and ash that covered nearby towns with a thick coat of soot.
Luckily, damage was minimal this time, but Cotopaxi does pose a significant risk to locals. The main threat is that a massive eruption would create a flash melting effect toward the summit, resulting in devastating lahars that would travel down the volcano's flanks. Most of the damage would be limited to the Cotopaxi National Park, but ash and smoke could still travel great distances. A large explosion in the future could destroy many settlements north of the main valley in the suburban area of Quito, which has a population of over 2 million. For now, people are safe, but it's critical to always be aware when a situation seems to be changing. On January 12, 2020, the Taal volcano, located on an island about 60 kilometers south of Manila, began ejecting ash and lava. A gigantic plume of rocks flew over 15 kilometers into the air and traveled all the way to Quezon City, which is 70 kilometers away. You can see the true scope of this volcanic event in this amateur footage. Volcanic activity from Tal stalled shortly after the January 12th event. However, volcanologists encourage people in the area to not take the reprieve for granted. For the time being, the volcano has remained at a level 4, which is the second highest level a volcano can reach. This means a disastrous eruption remained a very real possibility. What's even more devastating to think about is how Tal has erupted roughly 30 times since the 1500s. This kind of event has been seen in prior eruptions, so volcanologists are worried the area could see disaster very soon. As we mentioned earlier, plenty of natives are staying in the area, likely due to the false sense of security this lull has provided. Thousands of people remain living nearby the volcano, and their lives are at risk by remaining close. If the volcano were to erupt like it has in years past, then it would have global repercussions. It would contaminate the local water supply and disrupt all of the nearby